So, welcome back to Tailor's approach to cloth sewing in Blender. As promised in the last video, this is actually an extra short video which we can call as part 6. In this part, we're gonna talk about how to use all this because, you see, if we turn on the set, we've got this beautiful shirt. However, but we'd like to actually use this shirt on an actual character because, as of right now, the shirt is still on this static 3D model with an A pose. So, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So, let's get started. Okay, so what we're gonna do is actually a non-destructive approach to bind the shirt onto the character. The keyword here is actually non-destructive because as of right now, if you're searching online about cloth making in Blender, what you're gonna find out is that most of them will tell us to use Armature Modifier and parent the shirt to a rig that controls the model. So basically they deform the shirt using the same method as they do to the 3D model, and that is to bind and parent them to the rig. And by parenting the rig to the shirt to the rig, it becomes a destructive approach by itself. And now you might be wondering, why does it become destructive? Well, the problem with it is that the shirt, as of right now, has already had a deform modifier. As you can see here, when we check the cloth simulation, cloth physics simulations, in our modifier properties, you can see that we actually have a cloth modifiers, and that's if you click the drop down, you can find that under deform you will have, under physics you've got a cloth, which is this one. And yeah, so if we are to add an armature deform modifier, we're gonna end up with two full deform modifiers. And yes, that is problematic because Blender is more likely to get confused how to stack both modifiers. The other thing is that, actually, I think I'm just gonna show it that actually to show for it, I've created a Rigify rig for our static 3D model. And actually I've created a walk cycle, you can see. And yeah, so for example, if we are to parent our shirt to the rig, for example, with our probably this is a good time to turn on my shortcut. Okay, now if we are to bind this thing with Control P and then with automatic weights and let it do its thing, and yeah, here we go. So we've got a shirt now, and as I've said before, that when we parent the shirt to the rig, we got this armature modifier, and this is what we're talking about, that it is problematic because Blender doesn't really like it to have two modifiers, especially the one that deforms the object. So the other thing is actually when we do that, when we parent the shirt to the rig, we got this, all this depth vertex groups, which is, kind of cluttering, and most of them are unnecessary vertex groups, because you see there is all sorts of deformation bones here, and you got shin, you got ear, you got nose, lid, eye, jaw, and whatnot that comes with the rig. And of course we can, delete them, but it's, it's an extra step to just clean the mess. So actually that's not a very good idea to use an armature. And the other thing is actually you have to deal with weight painting, like this one, and you don't want that. I mean, like, that's just way too much effort for doing something that we can actually do the other way around. So okay, I'm just gonna reopen the file. So we start with a clean scene. This is the scene where we left off. We got our shirt body. We got the buttons under the shirts, and yeah, we've got our this is the body mesh. This is the one that we use. I'm just adding a rig and a copy, a duplicate of the body mesh under the rig, so that we have the original and we have the duplicate inside the rig. So we're gonna use the rig, and now with just our cloth modifier, let's see this one, and let's just turn on our cloth modifier. And okay, I'm just gonna bake the simulation from frame 1 to, let's say, frame, yeah, I've baked it before, so yes, let's just type 0 to frame 120 and let's bake. Okay, now that it's done, and let's play it. Yeah, as you can see, thanks to our clean, sorry, I haven't put it 120, sorry, and let's repeat that. As you can see, thanks to our clean shirt topology and fully physics simulated shape, even without any additional modifier, we've already got a splendid shirt movement. If we are to hide the rig, for example, you can see that the shirt looks great. They move realistically. However, we've got some problem actually with the color, as you can see there. The reason for that is, if you remember, because we pin the edge of the color to 2 vertices inside the open color vertex groups. Let's see. If we open edit mode, you can see that we have these 2 vertices, and this is our pin. If you go to physics properties, you would notice that under shape, we use the open color vertex group as our pin. So yeah, that's the reason. So even though now the shirt follows the movement of the body, but the pin remains at the same place, and it makes the color to look like it is pinned to some invisible point midair. Now, you may be thinking, why do we still need these pins, even though, I mean, like, we finished building our shirt, and now by leaving it there, it causes the problem mentioned above? Well, that's a good question. So yeah, let's try to remove the pin. So let's create a new cache, and let's just delete this thing, the pin group, and let's just bake the simulation again from 1 to 120. Sorry, from 0 to frame 120, and let's bake. Okay, now the bake is done. Let's play the animation. And yeah, as you can see, now if we remove the pin, we got this kind of sorry, this kind of flimsy. Probably you can see it better if we turn on the wireframe. Yes, we've got this kind of, you know, flimsy color, and we don't really want that, because what we want is for the color to stay upright, but it moves along the movement of the body. So to make the color move around, we actually have to move around the two vertices inside the open color vertex group, which is this one. We have to move this around. However, we cannot really actually move the vertices directly. What we can do is to bind the vertices to a movable object. So let's do that. If we go back to edit mode and again select the two vertices by select the open color vertex group and select, and let's hook it to a new object with the shortcut Control H and then hook to a new object. Right away we've got a new empty here, and that's gonna control the movement of our vertices. If we reduce the size to something like 10, maybe 1, yep, something like that. If we try to move this around, you would see that our vertices move too, right? So if we go, oh, you cannot really see it. So this thing, if we hide this, you can see that now we have the vertices. It's kind of invisible, but we got the line towards the vertices, and that's what we actually want. So let's go back to its original point, and now we just need to make this hook object to follow the movement of our rig. And to do that, we're gonna add an armature object. First of all, I think let's just rename it something like color control hook. Yep, something like that. And next we're gonna add an armature. But this one, because it's an empty, we don't really have a modifier. So it's gonna be under or inside object constraint, and right here under relationship and armature, and add a target bone, and let's select our rig. In my case it's Sonoya Rigify rig. Next we have to input this thing, the bone, the target bone, and right now we have to figure out what bone the hook object should follow. So yeah, let's hide the model, and then let's hide the fabric. And yeah, I find that again, this is something that I just figured out while doing this, that the chest bone is actually the optimal bone to anchor our hook object. So let's go to edit mode, and let's first select the rig and then edit mode, and let's see what is the chest bone. So again, this one is the control, so we have to see the deformation bones. And where is it? okay, that's the, if you use the Regify, the deformation bone is this one, and if we select that, you can see that we've got this def prefix, and that means deformation, meaning that that's the final bone that controls the, you know, the model. So yes, the chest bone, this is the chest bone, and it's called def spine tree. Okay, so we can just go back to object mode, and we can actually turn off the deformation layer, and we go back to our hook control, and let's go back, and we can now input def spine tree as its target bone. Okay, now I think we have to rebake the simulations, yes, and where is it? Okay, now if we add another one from 0 to 120, and let's bake it. Oh, sorry, I think we have to check the disk cache so that we can see it later. So let's bake it. Okay, now the bake is done, and let's play the animation. And okay, it hasn't, okay, that really hasn't give any effect, and probably the problem is actually here. If you go back to our modifier properties, you would notice that our hook modifier is actually under the cloth, and we have to actually make the hook the first. So if you haven't known this, these modifiers are kind of processed by Blender by, you know, rank, I would say. I mean, like they are processed in order from top to bottom. So the order which you put your modifiers is kind of important. So previously, when we put hook under the cloth, what Blender does is actually render the cloth, and then, you know, the hook moves around without actually affecting the cloth. So what we really want is for the hook to move around first, and then our cloth to follow around that hook movement. So yeah, I mean, like, I think we're gonna have to rebake the entire thing again, and probably we can just delete bake and we can just rebake it. Okay, now the bake is done. Let's play the animation. Okay, that's still not it. Oh, okay, I kind of forget that we should. Okay, let's delete the bake, and we should reuse our open color pin. And yeah, I guess we're gonna have to rebake the entire thing. So yes, let's bake it. Okay, now the bake is again done. So let's play our animation. Okay, that looks much better, because now our color moves left and right as the body moves as well. Okay, however, I think it seems that the color moves a little bit too rigid. And I guess the reason for that is because, you know, the distance between these two vertices, the one that is in our open color, the distance between these vertices remains static, even though we already have them follow the rig. So yeah, they are following the rig, but they remain, the distance remains static, but the position has already followed the rig. So yes, so maybe that's the next thing we have to fix. And here's the thing, from my observation, I noticed that the more our body, and in this case our torso, rotates left and right, actually there's less distance between these two vertices. The distance between the two tips of the collar will be. And yeah, in this case, the distance between the two tips of the collar is kind of controlled by the scale X of our hook, because if we scale it, now, wait a minute. I think I kind of forget to, restart my, shortcut. So if we try to scale the hook, you would notice that now you would see that the vertices is scaled down to the middle, and then that kind of, the distance between the two tips now is actually smaller. So okay, in short, if we decrease the scale X of the hook, the smaller the distance of the two tips of the collar will be. Now, to do that, we want that when our chest bone rotates, we want the scale X to be reduced. So yeah, to do that, we just have to add a driver to the scale X of the hook object. And here on the object properties, under the scale X, you just have to right click and then add driver. And you will notice that the input box now has turned to purple. Okay, next right click on it and open drivers editor. So okay, I know this is a thing. I think you cannot really see it, so I just have to add another window on my OBS, which is drivers editor. Okay, now there you go. Okay, now as you can see, yep, a new window pops out, and on the right side under the scale X, this is our X scale, and on the right side you'll see the driver panel, and this is it, the driver panel. And in the object input we'll add the rig. So let's just zoom out. We can actually use the eyedropper and then just select our rig, and it will just pops out. And yeah, and we'll add the def spine tree as its bone target. However, now we have to figure out which rotation axis of the def spine tree is responsible for its left and right rotation. Yeah, I think that's kind of easy to do. Let's just hide our body mesh. Let's hide our shirt too, and we can just turn on our rig, and we have to turn on our def layers, rig layers, And yeah, you can just in here in under viewport display, you can just check the display axis, and now you can see each bone's axis. You can see now we've got the X, we've got the Z, we've got the Y, and now we have what we have to figure out is our def spine tree. Go to edit mode, and this is the def spine tree, and we can see that now that the axis that is responsible for the left and right is its Z axis, because yeah, as you can see now the Z is the one is pointing forward. That means that's the axis that we're looking for, and so we can just turn off the axis, go back to our editor. Oh, okay, sorry. Probably you cannot really see that because it's kind of blocked by the our this thing. Okay, now I have to repeat it, I think, because in case you do not really see what I'm doing. So you just have to, under the object data properties of the rig, you can just turn on the axis and then turn on the def visible def layers, rig layers, and go to edit mode, and you can find out that this is our def spine tree, and you can see that the axis that is responsible for the left and right rotations is the Z axis. So yeah, we can just turn it off again, and I'm gonna activate my drivers editor again, and now we can do something in it. And let's just click back to our color hook, the hook object, and then under X scale you can see that under type we can just change it to Z rotation, and then the space to local space. So here's actually the numbery part, because next we have to actually figure out that what expression we should use, because we have set the rotation, we have decided the space, but we still have the expressions we have to deal with. So far we know that we want the scale X to decrease as the def spine tree rotates left and right. So because we want the scale X to decrease, mathematically that means we want it to be subtracted, right? And we also know that the default scale is 1. So now we're just gonna have to type 1 and minus. Then we want the scale X to be subtracted by the Z rotation of the def spine tree. So we're gonna add far on the expression tab, and yeah, okay, let's just hide it for now, and checking my OBS. Okay, that's kind of blocking again. Okay, now let's just replay our animation, and just like I mentioned, that the chest goes from left and right. So let's see in frame 48 what's actually happened on our driver editor. So okay, I think just gonna turn back my drivers editor and go back to our hook, and yeah, oh sorry, you should enter the expression. And so if you haven't, you just going back to the one before that. And now we are in frame 48, where the chest is rotated to the left, to her left. And if we open our drivers editor, you would notice that now we've got a problem, because if you notice, the value down here is a negative 0.043. And if we read the driver value up here, you'd see that our scale X now is 1.043. The mathematical reason for that is because the expression we have set is 1 minus var, and our var is a negative. As you probably have known, when we subtract a number with a negative value, it will add instead. So now what we have is actually 1 plus 0.043, which equals to 1.043. And to fix that, we just have to make sure that the var value is always a positive number. And to do that, we just have to add, in our expression tab, abs for absolute, and we're gonna put the var inside a bracket. Now, if we enter, don't forget to enter. Okay, now if you see up here, we've got a correct number, and 0.957, which comes from 1 minus 0.043, which equals to 0.957. However, by now you would notice that 0.043 is a way too small of a number. So here's not so secret number I figured to be a good multiplier, and that is a pi. We can actually just add a multiply here, and after the var, add a multiply symbol and type pi directly onto our expression tabs, and let's enter, don't forget that. Now, okay, with that settled, now we just have to rebake our simulation again. And yeah, let's see what we've got so far. Okay, 0, 120. Disk cache, don't forget the disk cache because we want to see it later for comparison. And let's bake. Okay, now the bake is complete, and I just realized that my drivers editor is still blocking the view. And yeah, so let's play the animation and see what we've got. And okay, let's just hide the rig. And okay, that the color looks, that looks great actually. The color looks natural with its natural bounciness, and by scaling it, we also actually add a little bit of parallax, so the color doesn't really move in the exact linear manner like the rest of the shirt. Because okay, let's compare it. Okay, that's why we use this cache. This is the previous one, the one without scaling, and this is the one with scaling. So let's play this one, the first one, and yeah, it moves, but it's kind of rigid. And to fix that, we have come up with the scaling of the hook object, and this is what we've got. Okay, that's really minor change actually, but it kind of give life, and you know, it gives more of a realistic look to it. So yeah, I like it, and yeah, that's kind of it actually. Yeah. Oh, okay. Now you might be thinking that, okay, yeah, this is great and all, but it's only great when we've done posing or animating our character and we are actually ready for rendering. But it's not so great when we are still in the middle of posing or animating our character. Because as of right now, if we turn on our rig and then we go to pose mode and try to move the controls around, you would notice that the shirt doesn't move or deform at all. And it's also not so great when we just want to, you know, play back our animation, because it's computationally heavy to calculate the cloth simulation. With method above, if we want to see our animation, we have to deal with baking the simulation, like the ones we did before, before we are able to have an optimal playback FPS in the viewport. And if we happen to tweak our animation, we have to rebake the simulation again and again. And yeah, that's not so great of an option, isn't it? So to fix both problems with one solution, we're actually going to use surface deform modifier. So okay, let's add the modifier, and it's here. It's the one here, surface deform, under deform modifiers, and let's bring it up and place it just below the cloth modifier. In the target input, we're gonna select our 3D model, and we're gonna bind. We're gonna bind them. Okay, that's kind of quick. Then we can safely deactivate the cloth and the hook modifier so that they don't stack. Yeah. Now let's play our animation again and see what we've got. Okay, as you can see, now our shirt deform as it should, with optimal playback FPS that is at 24, 25, and without having to bake the simulation first at all. Also, if we go to the pose mode right now and move the controls around, as you can see, the shirt now deforms accordingly to the body movement as well. And yeah, that's kind of great. However, here's the thing. However, when we go back to the object mode and we try to move the rig, we noticed that the shirt now doesn't actually follow the movement, the object movement of the rig. Well, okay, that's kind of cool, because first of all, you have to differentiate between movement in pose mode, because right now in pose mode, if we move the root, the shirt moves, but in object mode, if we move them, the shirt doesn't. And yeah, I think it's kind of cool because if we move the rig and then play the animation, you would see that the surface deform modifier still works, and it deforms the shirt accordingly. But it's just that now we move the rig in object mode that they no longer, you know, go together as it should. And to fix the problem, we still have to add one more thing and to the shirt, and that is a copy transform, not in modifier, but it's on the object constraints. And here it is. It's under transform and copy transform. And okay, now we just have to select the rig, and we notice that it snaps to the location of the rig because the origin point of the shirt is here. Meanwhile, our rig's origin point is here. So when you turn it on, it snaps. To fix that, we just have to change the mix option from replace to after original, and voila, the shirt moves to the correct place. But when we try to move our rig again, when we try to move our rig in object mode, we'd notice that the shirt now moves to a different direction, and it's kind of odd actually. And the reason for this is actually because if we go to our shirt and then check object properties, you would find that we haven't actually applied the rotation of the shirt, because as you might remember that this one goes from here. Sorry, okay, yep. Now, yeah, wait a minute. Why is it not change? Okay. Okay. Now. Okay. Now, if you remember that when we built the shirt, it's supposed to be lay flat on the ground, something like this. So when we rotate it 90 degrees to fit the orientations of the body, we haven't actually applied the rotation. And yeah, so that's what we're gonna do actually. We're gonna apply the rotation by Control A and apply rotation. However, you will notice that now the buttons are kind of out of place. And yeah, because actually we have parented the buttons to the shirt, which is rotated by 90 degrees. Now, when we apply the rotation of the shirt, our buttons are simply rotated 90 degrees forward. And to fix that, you can select our shirt and then Shift S and cursor to select it, and then change our transform orientations to global and its pivot point to 3D cursor. And yeah, next we just have to select all the buttons under the shirt, which is from 2 to A, and we can just rotate them back by 90 degrees, and now the buttons are back to where they were before. And yeah, now the buttons are on the correct place. And if we play our animation, sorry, we have to turn back on our surface deform modifier. You have to unbind it and you have to rebind it so it has the correct orientation now. So yeah, so now if we play our animation, and the shirt now, if we move the rig, you could see that now the shirt moves well, and then the buttons too, they still follow the shirt and all. And yeah, if we go inside the pose mode and then move them around, it's still, we have to pause it, and then if we move them around, you can see that the shirt still moves along the body, along with the body. And yeah, I think that's kind of it, actually. Yeah. However, you should know that this method, which uses the surface deform modifier, is just for the preview, because even though it's fast, which is great for a preview, but it's not as realistic as the one with our cloth simulation. The difference is most visible around the hem. As you can see, the hem, they kind of, you know, deform kind of badly. It's also around the armpit. You will notice that the cloth now kind of pierce with each other, and it's also on around the collar. You would see that now a small part of it is kind of dragged up, and yeah, so that's the caveat. And yeah, so actually to use this shirt, we can actually use each of both methods for a different stage of our project. For most part, when we are animating or posing our character, we're gonna use the surface deform method because it's quick, it's fast, and it's basically just lag free, even though it's not so accurate. And once we're finished and we are ready to render our scene, or we want to see the final movement, the final animation, we can then turn off the surface deform modifier, and both in real time and render, and turn back on our cloth and hook modifiers, and we can just bake it. And wait a minute, why the hook is going there? Okay, now the hook. Okay, we have to figure out with the hook. What's wrong with the hook? The vertex. I think we just have to... I think we have to re-hook our empty. We can just delete it, go back to our edit mode, and let's select our open color, and let's hook, Control H. We have to select the object, which is the color control hook, Control H, and hook to selected object. And now it moves swell, just like before. And yeah, we have to pull it up back again to its correct place. And yeah, we can just bake it, and we can see our final cloth simulation before rendering. And so yeah, I mean, I want to see the final. So yeah, I think that's it for now. I'm gonna render all this so you can see the final result, which I'm gonna attach to the end of the video, and see you later.